You are now 10 minutes away from a better day in home education. It's the homeschool pep talk we all need. See Mom Learn is a podcast for the perpetually curious, created by me, Tahira Goldson, a lifelong learner, home educator, and talent development professional. See Mom Learn what Khalil Gibran can teach about Charlotte Mason. Beyonce's Texas Hold'em. It begins with the line, "This ain't Texas, ain't no hold'em." Love it or hate it, it got me thinking. Are homeschoolers too coddled? Are we holding on to them too tightly when the world says to just let them go? They can sleep late and move through material at their own pace. No bus leaving early. No raising your hand to go to the bathroom. No teaching to the test. So many people ask, how will they survive in the real world? While I wasn't homeschooled, I come from a line of early scholars that include all of my immediate family. As soon as I was on campus, I began to learn about the long line of early scholars in American history. Children with families in agriculture, a remarkable number of U.S. presidents, Grandma Moses, the Wright brothers, Sandra Day O'Connor, elite athletes and entertainers like Justin Bieber and Serena Williams. Even Taylor Swift had a time when she was in her homeschool era. But 100 years before Taylor Swift was born, another famous homeschooler came into the world. Pay attention to the timeline here. That means Khalil Gibran was a contemporary of Charlotte Mason. I have no reason to believe the two ever met. But Gibran was a Christian who wrote in English and Arabic, and he was a highly influential Lebanese-American poet, visual artist, and author of the acclaimed book, The Prophet. He completed his first draft of the book at just 14 years old. He wasn't exactly homeschooled, but because he had little formal education, his studies were mostly self-directed, with the exception of language studies, which were taught by tutors. Here's a poem that's an excerpt from The Prophet. On Children. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but are not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. The poem goes on, and it's world famous. Sweet Honey in the Rock made it into a song, and naturally so. The words sing. But what's this got to do with Charlotte Mason? Well, her first principle of education states, children are born persons. Yeah, it doesn't sound radical, but when you're in a time like hers, in which children were imagined to be blank slates or empty vessels that experts pour into, the thought that children are just smaller people is pretty revolutionary. Gibran saw that too. Mason says children are born persons. Similarly, Gibran says you can give them your love, but not your thoughts. They have their own thoughts. You can house their bodies, but not their souls. Charlotte Mason's 19th principle of education goes something like this. Children must learn that their greatest responsibility is choosing which ideas to accept and which to reject. See the connection there? Mason says one doesn't really own their own child, and the child doesn't really own their own knowledge until he can express it. Children are required in Charlotte Mason method to narrate or tell back or write down what they have heard or read. In other words, we must support the cultivation of their own thoughts on what they are learning. Take some time this week to read the full poem, On Children, by Khalil Gibran, and take some time to read Charlotte Mason's Principles of Education. Both the works of Charlotte Mason and Khalil Gibran are in the public domain. But back to my original question. Is homeschooling synonymous with coddling children? To this, I'd say no. In many cases, they have more autonomy. more independence, and more say-so in their own lives. But for those who say homeschoolers are coddling their children and preventing them from coping with reality, I leave you with this wise quote from Elizabeth Mealy, a Maryland-based veteran homeschool educator and mentor we lost last fall unexpectedly. Out in the desert, there's very little food and very little water. Do you think, knowing those are the conditions his camels will face, a wise Bedouin prepares for a trip across the desert by starving and dehydrating his camels? After all, those are the conditions they will face eventually. Shouldn't he prepare them for it by denying them food and water now? Of course not. Obviously, he should feed them extra now and make sure they are as full of water as they can be, so that when the lean times come, they will have reserves to see them through. If we deliberately make our children miserable now to toughen them up, we're just sapping their strength and preventing them from developing. Instead, we should prepare our children for the dark, the coldness in this world, by giving them the warmth and the light to draw on when times grow hard. Until next time, I'm sending you love, light, and living books from See, Mom, Learn.